And this rush came into me like, how did that happen to me? How did people who were supposed to protect me treat me that way?
What happened that they decided to move to Canada?
It was rough times in the UK in the early 70s. You know, inflation was out of control. There's just no money left at the end of the week to buy food. But we did these, you know, a 48-hour race was still considered a sprint. Where you're like nonstop, you don't sleep 48 hours, you're just running through the woods. Really pushing my body to the edge, like just punishing myself. I broke the stress test machine. It's one where you run on the treadmill and it goes up a notch and you keep running and you go up a notch until you can't run. And they're measuring your heart and your breathing rate. I maxed it out. I was the athlete, I was the fit guy. They couldn't figure it out. And it was just all sorts of blood being drawn, tubes up everything, sleep clinics, scans. At one point, a doctor said, it's like you have non-specific rheumatoid arthritis. Because I had all the symptoms of RA, but the blood markers weren't there. Here's your medication. That's when I discovered the Wim Hof method, which is just this breathing system. You breathe in and out, big breaths, 30, 40 times. You let go and you hold your breath, the breath retention. See how long you can go. But the first time I did it, I felt better. This breath work just flushed it out. I felt like my old self. I had energy again. My skin cleared up. My joints got better. I could start to train again. If you faint in the water, you drown, and that's going to ruin your day.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. So don't do it in the water.
I'm Matt Mack, and this is Bloody Mavericks. Today on the show, we've got the founder and guide at Breathing in Nature, practicing the art of surrendering into the universe, coach of Wim Hof method as well. De do si hor. That's supposed to be Irish. How good it is? You tell me. Steve Beattie. Pleasure to have you.
It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, this is very exciting.
So Steve, because you've got your background is predominantly from Great Britain and British Islands. You've got some, obviously, English. You've got some of the Scottish, correct, and Irish.
Yeah, I'm a good thorough mutt of the Great Britain. I've got a lot of lowland Scottish and Northern British or Northern English.
All right,
is where my people are from. There's a dose of Irish. There's some Welsh in there. I was actually born in Wales.
Oh yeah.
But then there's a little dose of, there's about a 4% Viking mix in there.
Nice.
But you know, 1,000 years ago, the Vikings came to visit, and they, I guess, left some souvenirs.
Oh yeah, for some heritage for people.
Yeah, little
next generations, right? Awesome, Steve. So as my blind guest today, not really blind, because with English food there is not super big variety to choose from.
Not really.
It's quite simple food.
Yep, it's peasant food.
Yeah. It is, and therefore we've got a different version of a pie, which is supposed to be a beef pie. However, the pie part is separate from the stew.
Yeah,
so
I like it.
Go ahead.
All right.
And let me know what you think.
It looks good.
I had the guests with English background before, and we tried I think it was liver and
onions.
Yeah, it was some sort of pie, and it was really good as well. So was it liver and beef? I think so. Yeah, it was pretty good. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, they do like their pies.
Yeah, that's true.
It's actually often you get them now. You see them in their big full-size pies that you slice up and put on a plate. But a lot of those pies, they originated as just handheld pies. That was the purpose of them, and it was for the workers would be able to like the men in the mines or whatever it was. They'd be able to eat their pie, and they'd hold a little small handheld pie, and they'd be able to hold it by the crusty side.
Oh, okay.
So they don't get all the muck from their hands
Yeah.
on their food, and they were able to eat it. That was kind of the purpose of these small pies that they would eat.
Awesome.
And because with a sandwich, you got to have to grip the sandwich, and it didn't work so well.
That's right.
And no one could afford cutlery, so.
Yeah, that's true. I think, like for instance, the shepherd pie was something that originated also. Was it Ireland? I think it was Ireland too.
Yeah, I believe shepherd's pie is an Irish dish, but you also see that style in a lot of peasants' foods across Europe. That whole idea of kind of a stew in a pie is what it is.
Yeah, that's right.
And a lot of the time it is what we call the offcuts. It is the liver, the kidneys, the stomach.
That's right.
And they even make, blood sausage. That's just a sausage filled with congealed blood.
That's true.
They had to eat it.
And the beauty of that times was also that once they killed an animal, they ate it all, right? Or used the whole animal, right? The skin was used for making whatever shoes or belts or whatever it might be. The meat, muscle meat, was used for regular dishes, but then all the intestines and all internal organs were being used as well, right? So, as you said.
Yeah, you had to.
Yeah.
I think Europe is still much better at that than we are in North America. Here we just, there's a lot of food waste, where they just waste big parts of the animal. Or it goes to the animal food industry. Whereas in Europe, I think they still eat a lot of those cuts of meat.
That's true. The funny thing that you mentioned about the peasant food and way of pies, I know.
Getting hit with my fingers.
Yeah, with for instance, Hungarians and I think some Polish and also Slovak areas, they have same type of, they call it goulash.
Yeah,
and it's basically the same thing, but it's in the bread, a small bread, so you can eat it and dig into the bread. Basically, is like a small rounded bread. The insides are taken out, and the soupy part is poured in, and then you eat the whole thing.
Didn't Tim Hortons copy that a while ago?
Did they?
They were serving their soup in a bread bowl that you could then eat. But yeah, I grew up often eating a meat pie, or their big, and this was real sort of post-war Britain peasant food. We would eat corned beef from a can. That was fried, and it was probably fried in butter or margarine at the time, with cabbage, boiled cabbage. And I think that was it, just corned beef and cabbage was a common thing that we had. And we weren't peasants. My dad had a good middle-class job in Canada. That's why we came here. Yeah. But that was kind of a holdover from my parents as they grew up post-war Britain, eating corned beef in a can and boiled cabbage.
Yeah, those were the times where basically everything was so scarce that whatever they had, they had the opportunity to put their hands on. That's what they ate, right? Which is crazy if you think about it from perspective of today's nowadays times, right? We've got abundance of everything.
Yeah, well, my mother was an army brat, so she was, my grandfather went back into the army after the war, and so they traveled around. But my father, he was, his father was a police officer, and then he retired and he had a shop. But he remembers, he was born in 1947, but he remembers food rations still in the early 50s. That they'd have their tickets and you were able to get just a certain amount of flour and bread and eggs and milk and that kind of stuff. It's still being rationed even into the 50s. My father remembers. It's just, you can't wrap your head around that. Like you just go to the grocery store and get everything you want. There's no thought behind it. It's just, of course there's food. There's always food here. Yeah. Right? There's no food scarcity in our world.
That's so true.
It's just our little corner in the world. There's no food scarcity.
So, how I want to start where your parents basically got together and found themselves in that area.
So that was a controversial wedding, actually. So my father was born in Liverpool. His parents are Scottish, lowland Scots, and the Protestant.
Okay.
My mother was born in Chester. Her mother was from Manchester. Her father's from London, but they're Catholic. And back then, and even now to some degree in the UK, Protestants and the Catholics don't mix at all. And I believe my father's dad didn't go to their wedding.
Wow.
Yeah, he disapproved so much of his Protestant son marrying a Catholic. Yeah. So how they met, though, was actually through a blind date. There was a common... my mother's mom, so both my grandmothers had a common friend.
Okay.
And they hooked up their kids. And I guess my father wasn't doing well with the ladies. His mother was concerned he was a bit of a nerd, apparently, a bit of a dork. That's how the story goes. And so they were set up on a blind date, and I guess the rest was history.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how they met. And I think they were engaged within 6 months and married a year after that, something like that. So it was
quite fast.
Yeah. I don't know if it was fast then. Maybe that's how it was done.
Yeah.
But they were sort of standard age at the time. I think they were both 20 when they got married, but they met when they were 19, and that was that. Had their first kids at 22, my sister, and then me when they were 24. So young parents, but normal at the time. It wasn't, it was pretty, it'd be wild now if a 24-year-old had a kid.
That's true.
Right? But it was pretty normal back then. Yeah, that's how that happened.
The times change so much, right? When you think about even the people getting married or having kids, right now, if they are, most of the population would be around 30 or even later, right? Where people decide to have children, which is
I think it's
completely different.
It's mid-30s now is actually the average age for Canadians to have kids, their first kid.
Wow.
And that's why they only have one kid.
Yeah, because like if you think about even from biological standpoint, it's like women shouldn't be doing it so late because the risks are higher.
It gets risky. The older you get, the riskier it is, for sure. And even from my point of view, like I wouldn't want to have a kid now.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not going to be in my 70s when my kid leaves home.
Yeah.
It'd be crazy. Right? You want to be able to be young and have energy and play with your kid. And
that's right.
Yeah.
So true. So when your parents met, what was the decision? What happened that they decided to move to Canada?
So it was rough times in the UK in the early 70s. Because they got married in 67. Had my sister in 69, had me in 71. And we moved here in 74. There was no work. There was no work in the UK. My dad had a job. He was a journeyman. He was a welder by trade. And he had a full-time job and worked extra jobs on the weekend and whatever he could. But it was, inflation was out of control. There was just no money left at the end of the week to buy food. And by the time you paid your mortgage, your gas bills, heating, and things were getting tough. There was a lot of strikes. There was a lot of labor unrest in the UK. So it was just really tough for them to get going in life. It was tough. So they looked elsewhere, and my father applied for jobs in the Commonwealth. So he applied in South Africa, Australia, and Canada.
That's right.
And things were heating up in South Africa at the time. Apartheid was in full tilt. It was pretty awful over there. So they wrote that one off. They didn't want to go there after all. He got the job in Australia, but he didn't like the attitude of the Australians towards the Brits, so he didn't want to go there. So we came to Canada, and he got a job in a foundry in Owen Sound, which is here in Ontario, and it was for infinitely more money than he was earning over there, and we were suddenly, in their minds, rich. They were no longer sort of poor working class Brits. They were middle class Canadians, and a middle class Canadian in the 70s could have whatever you want. Cars were cheap, houses were cheap, property was cheap, everything was, you could just buy it. And so we moved in 74, and life was good. And in fact, we bought our first, well, I didn't buy it, my parents bought their first piece of property I don't know, in that first year or shortly after that.
Wow.
A big piece of property on the Bruce Peninsula. The cliff ran through my back. The Bruce Trail was in my backyard. That's where I grew up playing. They bought it for $2,000. That was, probably more like $20,000 in today's money. But even, buying a piece of property like that for $20,000, it would be $2 million nowadays. So it was, and they could just do it. It was easy for them to buy that. So yeah, life changed, and we had a pretty good, from the outside, a pretty good looking life. We had everything we wanted. We go on vacations, we had cars, we had a nice house, we had all the toys we needed, something that we just couldn't have had if we stayed in the UK. We would have been poor working class. Yeah. That eventually changed in the UK. In the 80s, it started to turn around, and that poor working class became a middle class, and things were a little bit easier. And then through the 90s, it became more so, and now they're trying to reverse that.
Yeah. It's amazing how times change, and the numbers, especially in the 70s in Canada here, where it is just from a perspective of a person who is dealing with economic system nowadays, it's just ridiculous. Like, if there was properties for $2,000, I would buy as many as I can get my hands on.
Can you imagine?
Right? And it's, as you say, it's completely different, comparing not only the value of the money of a dollar, but also the inflation and everything, and the spikes and all, where the same piece of property is 2 million instead of 2,000, which is.
But there was no rush. Like if suddenly you found property now for even just $100,000, right? You were like, "Where's my line of credit? I'm buying it right away."
Yes,
because there's that need. But back then, everybody knew that they would just get their home. You'd go to school, you'd get a great job right out of high school. Maybe you go to college if you want to go into the careers, but you just get a great job and have money, and you'd be able to buy a house, and you wouldn't be crippled with debt forever. Right. You'd have a mortgage, it'd be fine, but you just knew that this is the way it was, and everything was fine. It's not like that anymore.
No.
Now it's a struggle.
Yeah,
like you're not getting any kind of job out of high school.
No.
You have to at least get a 4-year degree at university to get what should just be a regular old job. Right? And then you're not even earning enough money you still can't pay the rent on that.
That's
right.
True. That's so true.
The cost of living is way out of whack, and that's not just Canada. That is the end of the Western world as we know it. The collapse of this experiment in capitalism is what we're witnessing.
There are those waves and cycles in every economy, right? Where the economy goes up and goes down, and it basically fluctuates through the process. But definitely the American dream and America or USA as a imperial economy that's coming to an end pretty fast. So.
Faster than we thought, actually. It's we're witnessing right now the end of the American dollar. It was the currency, they took it from the British pound post-war when they bailed Britain out, and the American dollar became the thing that all the countries in the world traded with. Everybody's leaving it now. Africa on a whole, about a week ago, said we're not using the American dollar anymore. Just quit the American dollar. It's shocking.
It is. It is. There will be definitely repercussions, and the economy will feel it quite soon, and everyone in not only Western Hemisphere but also the old continent will feel it too, because of all the tie-ins between economies and all that. I'm curious to see which of those two countries meaning China and India, which one will become a dominant economy in coming years.
Well, it will be China for sure, but it won't be the Chinese currency that they use, the yuan, because China's a pretty horrible place to live. And there's a lot of billionaires there who want out. but all their money is trapped in the Chinese currency.
Yeah.
So if they make the Chinese currency a global trading currency, they'll be able to leave. China doesn't want that to happen.
Yeah.
So that's why they're creating the BRICS currency. It's a new combined currency of a bunch of countries have signed up for it.
Yeah.
So that these billionaires in China still can't leave. They still have to keep their money in China to keep China rich.
Yeah.
But it'll be China is the one who's emerging as the dominant force. And they're doing things very differently. It's fascinating to watch, whereas the Western way to do it was to dominate the rest of the world.
Yeah.
They force their will on other people. Great for us in the West. We were, we benefited from it.
Yeah.
But not so good for the third world and the developing nations.
That's true.
All of Africa, Central South America, Southeast Asia. They suffered a lot through the American hegemony of that. China's not doing any of that. They're not forcing any political will on countries. They're just going in and building roads and railroads and hospitals and schools so that it's a peaceful place for them to extract things that they need. And they're buying it at fair market value instead of bribing countries. Yeah. They really are looking at this. I don't know if I'm just brainwashed by the media I've seen. I'm not sure. But they're following that principle of, a rising tide lifts all ships. That they are seemingly helping these poor countries rise up. I'm sure there's a dark side to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure it's there. But we'll see what happens. We're living very interesting times.
We do, definitely. And I'm sure there's more to it than I can see. And just being in, for instance, Cambodia or Vietnam, there is a huge influence of Chinese business going there, buying, building, and all that. But because of proximity, I think a lot of that business is still going back to China.
Yeah,
and yeah, definitely locals have jobs. The levels are rising, but it's not like it's lifting the whole economy of the country. It's there's a trade-off for sure.
Yeah, and China itself has huge domestic problems too, with poverty, slavery, genocide. There's a lot of problems there. So they're on shaky ground anyway. They have a lot of problems they have to solve within their own country.
That's right.
As well. But I think maybe part of it might be just their own history of being a colonized nation by the Brits and conquered by the Japanese during the war, that maybe they don't want to inflict that kind of imperialism on other countries. Economic imperialism for sure is happening, but that's sort of dominant culture and crush these people and make them be like us. They don't seem to be interested in making, Rwanda a Chinese state at all. So, and it might be, we started the whole colonialism 500 years ago, almost 600 years ago with Portugal and Spain. And the point of that was to conquer. And then the French did it, the British did it, the Americans carried that forward with the idea is that we'll conquer them and take what they have.
Yeah.
Whereas it doesn't look like China's trying to conquer nations. They're just...
That's a good point.
They're trying to extract wealth from nations, but not by conquering them.
Yeah, they are definitely planting their seeds and building businesses, so it in some way benefits... definitely benefits them a lot because they can use the cheaper labor and all that. But yeah, definitely it's the way they are doing it is not like we'll see with Taiwan, which is constantly on the breaking point. There is a lot going on around that area, and
one of the interesting things to think about with Japan though, or with China, is that if you're a peasant, if you're just a poor person in China and you want to get out of the village and become an engineer or something with a career, you go to the army. And then the army educates you. You serve in the military for a while, then you go to university, you become an engineer. And then you go and work on one of the massive Chinese projects that are going on around the world, building cities around the world. And we have these cities all over the world, all through Africa and South America, Central America, huge build projects by China that are filled with Chinese engineers and scientists of 50, 60,000 people strong, all ex-military, all over the world.
Yeah. There is a danger to it. I see a huge danger to it because suddenly you've got those inactive military personnel all over the world, and it's just not much.
It's go time whenever they want.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah.
But
not trying to spread conspiracy theories here, but
yeah.
that's a real thing.
It is. Let's circle back to the heritage part and the Great Britain part where your parents were coming from, and then the Canada, as you mentioned, them starting here in the 70s and being able to afford things that it was completely out of reach in Great Britain after the war. Was that perspective or anything through your upbringing that you can remember? Are there any particular things that you've been brought up with that you carry through your life that you believe made you or keep you successful or made a big impact?
Yeah, there was my father's Protestant upbringing. The Protestants pride themselves on their work ethic, especially the Scottish ones. That's their big deal, is their work ethic. And my father was a very, very hard worker. He was always working, taking all the overtime he could have, taking extra jobs from time to time just to work, be productive. So I witnessed that growing up. My father was a very, very hard worker. He was the breadwinner for the family. My mother was a stay-at-home mom for the most part.
Yeah.
When we were older, she had a few jobs in a bookstore and a dress store and that kind of thing. But she was a stay-at-home mom. So we had that traditional role, that traditional British family life. Father goes off to work, mother stays home and tends to the kids, tends to the house. So I saw that tradition and the hard working. So I have a pretty solid work ethic. I just keep going. But there's a flip side to that too. There was also, because particularly from my mom's side, she was quite poor growing up. I think my father was, while there was lack in society at the time, his family was well enough off. He didn't go without, apart from the nation was going without. So there was always that they had this lack mindset. It wasn't enough mindset. And so they brought that to our family, to our home. And I grew up believing that there isn't enough, that there's a lack of something. So that was kind of part of my emotional psyche growing up and into adulthood, that there isn't enough, that I'm lacking something. And when you have that mindset that you can't have something, it kind of stops you from trying to get that thing, because you just believe you don't get it. You're not going to have that thing.
You believe that you will not get it.
And so both those things, this drive and this hard work, and then this other underlying belief that it's all for nothing because I'm not going to get the thing anyway. It was a bit of a
both direction tool, kind
of stuck between those two
being stretched
polarities there. Yeah. And so finding that and understanding what that is in myself has been a part of my growth. As a man, as I've been growing and understanding me in my healing journey in the past several years, is understanding some of those aspects of me and coming to terms with it. And that's definitely a sort of an ancestral thing that has come into my family because of that. Not just mine. I think anybody who came from a post-war place or came from poverty, or as a parent who came from poverty, is going to have those same belief structures built into them. Right? It's just the way it is. So that was kind of an ancestral thing. But more than that is, both my parents were damaged people. My father's older brother and sister, they're like 16 and 18 years older than he is. They had left home. And then my grandmother got pregnant. And they were done. They were done having kids. Kids were gone. They're done. They were like getting ready to enjoy retirement. And now suddenly there's a new kid coming along. And so from what I understand, I never met my grandfather. He died just a couple of months before I was born, my dad's dad. But from what I understand, he never wanted to have another kid and never really, you always love your kid. You have a kid, you love your kid, but he never loved his kid.
Yeah.
Right? He didn't want to have a kid. He resented having this kid that's just slowed everything down. He was ready to move on with his life, and now he can't. So there's a lot of resentment towards his own son. And so my dad grew up in that environment, which caused him to be a certain way.
Yeah.
Right? And then my mother, her father was taken prisoner like day one of World War II. It was very early on in the war. It was in 1939. He was taken prisoner. He was in France. He was a medic. He was taken prisoner. He was a POW for the entire war. And he did not have a good time. And he came back in 1945 and got drunk and stayed that way until he died in 1993. Like, he lived for a long time being drunk.
Yeah.
So my mother was raised in an alcoholic home. And so that leaves all sorts of damage on a kid and growing up. And so,
yes, for sure.
Yeah, so she has her own demons that she has to battle with. So my sister and I have these two parents, because of their heritage and how they came in this world, had all these wounds and scars that they were now doing their best with.
Yeah, the baggage they were carrying.
The baggage that they were carrying. And at a certain point, they just said, we can't carry this anymore, you take it. And so then we go into the world carrying all this baggage for them. And
we touched on it before, but you mentioned a couple times that the moment of a breakthrough and transformation happened when you went through your own healing and accepting where you're coming from and what you have to carry. You had to carry before, and the understanding made it way easier, right?
Yeah, it's a big part of our healing. This is what I do. I help people on their healing journey. I help them find their path to healing. And everybody's path is different. There is no book that you read and 12-step program.
Yeah.
It's unique. You have to scratch around in the dark for a long time to find out what you need. And a big piece of that is awareness of what happened. And then telling that story of what happened. And it's not so that the world can hear your story. It's so that you can hear your story.
Yeah.
When you hear your words, or when you write down your words, it turns this energy that's inside of you into a reality. And then when it comes into reality, then you can release it and you heal. You don't change the past. You don't change what has ever happened to you. You've gone through the most horrible trauma you can possibly imagine. That still happened to you.
Yeah.
But you release the energy around it. The pain around it is released by coming to terms with it and speaking your truth. And it can be a very painful, long process.
Yeah.
But that's what happens. And so for me, what happened, I was an athlete. All my life I've been into sports. I've always loved being athletic. And I did multi-day adventure racing, that became the obstacle courses that we have now. But we did these, a 48-hour race was still considered a sprint, where you're like nonstop. You don't sleep 48 hours. You're just running through the woods, or biking, or climbing a cliff, or paddling a boat, or whatever it is. And so I was always into like that kind of thing, really pushing my body to the edge, like just punishing myself. Which I'll circle back to that idea in a minute, if you haven't guessed. But as I was doing this, my body was breaking down. I wasn't recovering as much as I used to. It was hard going. I talked to my doctor. She said, you're getting old. I was like 30. You're getting older.
You're getting older.
Yeah, you're getting old. You got to slow down. I'm still not getting older. And I would change stuff. I changed the way I was eating, my diet. Worked on my sleep hygiene, changed my training regimen, like all sorts of stuff. I tried to change, and it would make little things better. It would be better for a while, and then it wouldn't. I kept falling back and
regressing,
regressing and regressing. And then my son was born. I was 36 years old, and I was walking down the hall in the hospital holding him, this little tiny, tiny baby. And my ex was sleeping. And I was looking at him, and I made a promise to him that it would be different. And and this rush came into me like, how did that happen to me? How did people who were supposed to protect me treat me that way? And it was just a really painful realization that my life wasn't very good. Mm-hmm. My upbringing wasn't very good. My parents weren't very good at being parents. Mm-hmm. Not their fault. It was their responsibility.
Yeah.
And now it's my responsibility. But I zipped that up and hit it down deep inside and didn't say anything. And that's when I got really sick. That's when my body just exploded. I was breaking out of rashes. I would wake up in the morning and like both my ankles were sprained. I couldn't move. I couldn't walk. Wow. Chronic headaches. I couldn't breathe. Probably I kept coming down with congestion for no reason. This went on for years, about 6 years after that. I was 42 when this happened. It was almost exactly 10 years ago. I was really sick. Everything was inflamed. My hands were swollen. I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't move my arms because my armpits hurt. And I was like really congested. And I made an emergency appointment with my doctor, the family doctor. And I've got this horrible flu. I need something for it. But she wasn't there. Her, the other doctor in the office was there, and she took me in, and she was going through my chart. She didn't know me, so she was going through the chart. And over the past, 15 years or so, I'd been with this doctor. I kept coming in with like swollen this, well, my knee suddenly swollen up, or my shoulder suddenly, or my ankle, or this or that. Like I kept having these inflammatory events. Yeah. And she looked at them and goes, what's going on here? You have some sort of inflammatory problem. We're going to take some blood work and see what these inflammatory markers are. They stuck a needle in my arm. I don't remember anything else after that. I just blacked out. I woke up on the floor with all these, all the nurses in the blood clinic around me, like fanning me back awake. I got to come to, and I felt really odd. And my heart was bouncing around in my chest, and I couldn't catch my breath. And I got into atrial fibrillation. I'm the athlete. I'm the one who can like run up a mountain. Yeah. I work out at a gym all the time. And that's not supposed to happen to me. Mm-hmm. And they call an ambulance. And it's horrible. They stuck the electrodes on to measure my heart. The paramedics get there. They rip them off. Like I'm bleeding now from my chest. And they put new ones on. Not in the same spot. Mm-hmm. Like over a little bit. I get to the hospital. They rip those ones off and put more on. So I have all these like bloody patches all over my chest. But we go to the hospital, and I'm in the emergency room, the ICU, and I'm hooked up, and I'm watching the heart monitor, and it's just like bouncing up and down. And they bring the crash cart in. They're going to zap me. Wow. And bring my heart back into sinus rhythm. I'm going, what is going on? This can't be happening to me. I'm not sick. I said that out loud. And it was those words, again, that story that I brought into reality. I'm not sick. And it felt like such a right thing to say. And I shouted it in the emergency room, I'm not sick. And my heart went back into sinus rhythm. Wow. Just like that. I don't know. That's pretty cool.
It is.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal, actually.
Yeah. And it was just bringing that reality of, I'm not sick. This is my reality. I'm not sick. And it changed something in me. Now I have to go through all the testing to find out why I'm sick. And it was just all sorts of blood being drawn, tubes up, everything, sleep clinics, scans, the stress test. I broke the stress test machine. It's one where you run on the treadmill and then it goes up a notch and you keep running and you go up a notch until you can't run. And they're measuring your heart and your breathing rate. I maxed it out. I was the athlete. I was the fit guy. And there were people coming in to watch. It was funny. They couldn't figure it out. At one point, a doctor said, it's like you have non-specific rheumatoid arthritis. Because I had all the symptoms of RA, but the blood markers weren't there. Here's your medication. And I'm looking at it, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's one of those awful steroids that destroys you. And I'm not anti-medication at all. If you're in crisis, you need medication, for sure. But not as a lifestyle. Yeah. That's not going to work. It's not going to work for me. No. And so that's when I discovered the Wim Hof method, which is just this breathing system. You breathe in and out, big breaths, 30, 40 times. You let go and you hold your breath, the breath retention. See how long you can go. And you do that 3 or 4 times. And then you have a cold shower. It's that simple. You just breathe and have a cold shower. I will add this now. Never do breath work in water. That's the worst thing you can faint doing breath work. Yeah. So never do it in the water. If you faint in the water, you drown. And that's going to ruin your day.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. So don't do it in the water. But the first time I did it, I felt better. 20 minutes of breath work, I felt better. And I wasn't inflamed, but I was just used to the stiffness in my body. This breath work just flushed it out. I felt better. I felt like my old self. I had energy again. My skin cleared up. My joints got better. I could start to train again. I was running again. I felt great. Breath work, cold showers. I started doing ice baths. This was like 10 years ago. I was going down to the lake in the wintertime. You go down there now, there's dozens of groups doing it. I was the only guy. I was going down there. I was doing my breath work, going into the water. It felt great. It felt incredible. And so I wanted to, by now I'm an instructor in the fitness industry. I'm teaching people fitness modalities, movement testing, and fascial stretch therapy. So I wanted to teach the Wim Hof method to save my life.
Yeah.
People need to know this. And so I do a quick search, and Wim was coming to Toronto. Like a couple of weeks after I looked this up, there was a big Wim Hof event in Toronto. This was 6 years ago. And so I signed up right away, and it was at the Brickworks. It's massive. There's like 400 people there all breathing together. It was pretty wild. But I'm an early guy, as you may have noticed. I show up everywhere early. So I get to the Brickworks early. Wim is an early guy. He was going for a walk in the woods. I'm going for a walk in the woods. And I go, Wim? So we go for a walk together. I get to know Wim. Really down-to-earth, nice guy. Wonderful man. So warm. You see him on the videos. He's like, rah, 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 rah. He gets really excited, really passionate about what he's doing.
Yeah.
But in person, he's just this warm, gentle man. So we do that, and then I go to California for an advanced weekend. And up to this point, I'd only done the basic Wim Hof method, where you breathe your 30 or 40 breaths. Do that 3 or 4 times. The whole thing is like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
On the second day of this 2-day event, we do a 90-minute breath practice where we're breathing in and out, over and over again with breath holds at the top. You breathe in and hold, and you let go, and breathe and breathe and breathe, and let go all your air and hold your breath again, and just kept on going. My whole body is vibrating, just shaking. My arms are going into spasms, they're curling out, my fingers are going stiff. It's called Tetany. It's not the goal of the Wim Hof method to go into Tetany at all. This was 6 years ago. My lips are puckered up and I'm numb in the face. I'm, oh, what's happening? And I'm looking around. Other people are doing the same thing. I'm, okay, I'm going to keep going. I felt like I was levitating. And at the end of that, I moved my body and I suddenly had this agitation, this nervousness, this unpleasant feeling was rising up inside of me. I was like, calm down. That was weird. I don't know what that is. That was bizarre. Get rid of that. Don't want to feel that. That's not the Wim Hof method. Fast forward about 6 weeks. I'm in Australia for the master module for the Wim Hof method. And it's a 5-day event of all things Wim, learning all the science, different ways of breathing, all sorts of exercise around breathing and meditation and movement. We're swimming in the Southern Ocean in August, which is their winter. Is icy cold. Icy cold. It's beautiful. Met some wonderful people. Closest friends I have were made on that trip. And the first day, our instructor, Jerome, told us, Wim was there, but Jerome told us to meditate on your blockage. I want to be an instructor. You're stopping me. That's my blockage. But every day, meditate on your blockage. Meditate on your blockage. And I sort of played around with some ideas. I'm not entirely happy in my marriage. I'm not entirely happy with my career right now. I don't know. Is that a blockage? I don't know. And it was on the last day, day 5. We have this long breath session, 90 minutes of breathing. By now I know how to breathe properly. I'm not going into these spasms anymore. And I'm just like, whoa, floating. And I'm just like, this colors, and my eyes are closed. And I'm like in space, is just colors and vibrations moving through me. And then we go into the ice bath. And I was feeling kind of an energy in me. I didn't know what it was. I go into the ice bath for the last time. And when you go into an ice bath, you lose your breath. You gasp in. You can't get it out. And you like your breathing's upside down. And you finally, after about 20 to 40 seconds, you find your breath again. And it's in that moment that I had this moment of clarity, and everything just lined up. It's like my brain went snap, and I saw my life, I saw my past, I saw my future all at once. Just this everything all at once. And then that thing that I discovered in California 6 weeks earlier bubbled up, and I burst into tears. And then I started to laugh, and I was crying, I was laughing. What is happening to me? What's happening? I hope no one can see this. And I get myself together, get out of the ice bath. I think that's weird. And my close friend Asher was there, and he put his arm around me and said, "Are you okay, brother?" I fell into the dirt. My legs gave out. I just fell, and I began to cry, just bawling my eyes out for about 3 hours. Just everything was coming out of me. I couldn't stop. There was no stopping it. It was just rushing out. And it was the first time I had cried in 32 years.
Wow.
Because I just shut it all down when I was an adolescent.
That's a suppression.
Yeah. And it was that suppression of emotions that was driving the inflammation in me, that was driving this disease that I gave voice to when my son was born. How could someone do that to me? And then I had to begin healing. Now it's out. This big bubble of grief for my life came out. And now I have the emotional intelligence of a 12-year-old. So now I'm growing. Now I'm trying to figure me out. This is 6 years ago. Now I'm trying to figure me out. Now I'm trying to heal and trying to understand me and giving voice to the story inside of me and learning who I am and where I'm from. And it's been an incredible journey of healing. And then in that, I found the tools to help other people find their journey, find their path, find out who they are, and give voice to their story. That's what it's all about. I often, in the breathwork class that I teach, I often talk about the story with no words. It's just an energy inside of you. You know it's there. We all have one.
Yeah.
Most of the time, we're too scared to touch it because we don't know what's on the other side.
Oh, yeah.
Fear is a big block. But fear is nothing more than a spider web. It just falls apart when you step through it. But now you got to do the work. Fear is stopping you from doing the work. If you go through that fear, now you have to do the work. And it's difficult. You have to come to terms with all sorts of emotional things, trauma in your life, things that have happened to you, and figure it out. And I'm not trying to make a big deal about, not everybody has horrible trauma in their life, but we have things about the way we show up. We have our attachment style with our partner, right? We have parts of us that behave in certain ways, that show up at certain times, that are not the best way to do things. There's a little boy version of you that had a temper tantrum, and he was told off, don't behave that way. So he was locked up in a cage inside of you. And at certain times, that little version of you comes up, and you're nothing more than a 3-year-old having a temper tantrum in your adult form with the adult words.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
As a grown man.
Yeah. And so these are the inner child wounds that we have to varying degrees, but they're there.
Yeah.
And so that thing that and when you've had one of those episodes where you didn't show up the best way you could have shown up, and it's often in relation to our spouse, to our wife, to our husband, to our lovers, because they're the ones who trigger us the most, right? And we behave, and then afterwards you think, oh, crap, I could have done better.
Yep.
Right? That's the beautiful thing about being in a relationship with your partner or in a community, because that's how we see ourselves. We see ourselves as people see us. And so a lot of the time when people begin this journey, they have their old friends, You go to the bar with them, they have a few drinks, maybe watch the game.
Yeah.
Now you're doing the soul work. You're getting down to the dirty stuff. And you don't relate anymore. So you stop going to the bar, you stop watching the game, you stop, having a game of pickup on the weekends, and you isolate yourself.
Yeah.
But if we heal in relation to others, if we see ourselves as others see us, and no one's seeing you anymore, how do you heal? So it's critical that we find the others.
So it sounds like the community aspect of the healing is one of the most important ones. Not only doing the healing on your own, but also having people who witness you through that process.
Yeah, it's critical. And that first step is doing your own thing, going inwards and finding that story and giving it voice. There it is. It's on the table. Now what? Now you start, plugging away at it, but you need to stay in connection. We're social animals, right? Humans are social, like a wolf pack. We need the others. We are not. I used to pride myself on the fact that I was a lone wolf. Do it on my own. That was part of that independence, that hard work that I was given. Do it on your own.
Hustle culture.
Yeah, that hustle culture. I was great at that. Do it on your own. Never ask for help. That's what I believed. And my emotional state, I didn't need anybody. I had friends, but I didn't need anyone. Right? When and I was married. I didn't need my wife. I didn't need that emotional connection to a woman. When I came back from Australia, I changed the script. Now I do. She has her own wounds. We were perfect for each other. We didn't need anyone. She still didn't, but I did.
Yeah.
Right? So that was part of that pulling away and separating. I got divorced. That was the only way forward in my life, was for that to happen. And so it's critical that we find the others. And that's why I run. We did the men's trip 2 weeks ago, where men come together and we do this journey together and we hold space. You're on your own path, but we did the journey together. And our open groups with men and women that come, we journey together, but you find your own path and we support you on that path. And even in our circle of friends that I have now, and we have this big, beautiful community, and we meet every Saturday. It's the Wim Hof Method Toronto meetup group that I run. I guide the breathwork with a drum. We go into the water together, and it's just a group of people who are healing, and it's beautiful. And people sort of stagger into it, and I want to try this thing, and then they stay for weeks, months, years, and they found the others. It's beautiful.
Yeah, the community aspect of working and being surrounded with people who understand you and who give you a space to express yourself fully is incomparable to anything else. And I relate a lot to a moment when you said that once you go through the healing journey, very often you isolate yourself. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, especially on their entrepreneurial journey, they have to, at some point when they realize their next steps, what their next steps are, automatically they need to sort through the previous or current relationships in order to be able to move forward, right? And that's constant movement for a lot of entrepreneurs and mavericks for that instance, is to be able to constantly go forward, constantly grow and develop, whether themselves or the company that they are nurturing. And very often a lot of people who I talk to, they are craving community because they know, like, once they go into the zone or the flow of doing their own thing, they just focus on that, and then everything goes on the second, third, fifth, or 20th plan, and it's no longer so important. But when they take a step back and think about what they really need, they connect really good with other people.
Yeah, and that's one of the downfalls that's where a lot of entrepreneurs fail, right? They have a brilliant idea, they're great thinkers, and they're great at pushing an idea forward, but they're not good at saying, hey, I need some help now. It's gotten so big, I can't do all these things now.
Yeah.
But they're lone wolves, and they have a reluctance to ask for help, to come in and allow somebody to join this energy that they have and bring their energy into it. They won't let go of their piece of it at all. And they kind of push away that idea of community, because community, and that's one of the things that we see a lot in the healing world. We see gurus pop up where it's my way and everything else is wrong. So if you're going to be part of my community, you have to do exactly what I say, how I say, and they become these cult leaders. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
In all sorts of places, it happens. You have to be able to, in community, there is no leader in a community. It's shared energy. And there's a part in that entrepreneurial business building stuff where you have to share the vision. You have to let other people come in and have a vision of your idea.
So true.
And let it grow. And, at the end of that path, it might be so completely different than what you had envisioned to begin with. But it's going to be better.
Yeah.
Because you're letting other people's energy come in and drive it forward as well. Same thing with the healing community that we have. You have your own idea of what you need to do next, but you don't know for sure. You don't know what works. But when you share with others and you hear other people's stories that they're telling themselves, when you hear those stories, you are applying that story to yourself. And that's my friend Asher, who witnessed me in Australia. He runs a group out of Australia. It was called the Warrior Within, and it's now called the Fifth Direction. And it's a men's healing community, but it's open to men and women, because men heal in community, and part of our community is our mothers, our wives, our daughters, our friends. They need to witness us as well as just a group of men. But it's based on the mythopoetic men's movement that came out of I guess the Minnesota men's group in the late 80s, early 90s by Robert Bly. And it started that and a few other men. And it's based on the myth of places, the stories of places, and all the myths and legends of different places around the world. Those stories are all the same. They have different names, the name of the hero is different in different languages and different cultures. But it's a hero who is called into action. He fights a dragon, and he returns a warrior.
Victorious.
Yeah. So and a hero is someone who just fights for himself.
Yeah.
Right? That the great football star is a hero. He wants the glory of the game.
Yeah.
Our Western culture is based on hero worship. A warrior fights for his community. He wants the whole community to rise up. And that's what the hero's journey is about, descending into that darkness and doing that battle against your demons, which your demons are just, a demon is a fallen angel, right?
It is.
So you were just, a poorly misunderstood part of you is what you're coming to terms with. You're understanding it. And it's in that understanding and awareness that it heals. But a part of that is going dark. You have to go down into that darkness and hang out there for a while and really understand who you are in order for that to heal. And then you rise up with all this strength, with all these new tools to be able to do it again and again. But so all these myths and legends that we have in the world, you right now are a character in one of those stories.
Yeah, the first thing when you are describing this story, I have a picture of Spartans.
Yeah.
Because they were warriors, a small group of Spartans that won, like the movie 300, which is based on true facts. When they won against the oppressor, the Persians coming in, and they were just few warriors who tried again. Tried until they won, right?
And then they believed that they were going to die. They were doing that to hold off the Persians long enough before they got to the city.
Yeah, and that's the journey on going dark as well, right? You need to go into that darkness, allow yourself to go into the darkness and accept it.
Yeah, knowing that you will die.
Yeah.
The hero won't die. The hero only wants to play the football game if he's pretty sure he's going to win the game, right?
That's right.
The warrior goes into battle knowing and willing that he will die, right? Because we're doing it for the greater good.
Yeah. Based on that, I want to hear what's your definition of a maverick?
A maverick, to me, is a warrior. That's what that is. A maverick will fight for the greater good of what he's doing outside when the structure of society, when the rules of society are not serving the good anymore. The maverick will step out of that and fight for something better, build something better, whatever that is. That to me is what a maverick is. He'll stand up against the oppressors, whatever the oppressor might not, not the big evil oppressors, but just this is the way things are supposed to be, because it's always been that way.
That's right.
And the maverick is saying, actually, it's not. We're going to do it this way, and stand up for that and push for that. And bring the others with him or her. Yeah. I think that's what a maverick is. A maverick is a warrior.
Amazing definition. I wanna stay in that area and ask you, how are you different?
So that's a big question. How am I different? I'm fighting for something different than I used to. Through my healing, the big thing that happened for me when I had that emotional release is I wanted to share that story so that other men know that they can do it too. Because it's hard. It's really hard.
It's really hard.
But that's all I knew. I didn't know how to do that other than share my story. But I didn't know how to support another man or I didn't know how to support another person in their healing journey. I didn't know how it was done. So how I'm different now is that I do know how to do that now. And in my journey in the past 5 years now, I've been working with psychedelic medicine, and in that realm I've really come to, it changes your perspective of things quite radically. And I've had some very interesting experiences of understanding myself and understanding how energy works in the universe, which is a very, very big change for me. I have a science background. We measure things, we repeat it, we measure it again now as a fact.
Analysis, paralysis.
A lot of it is just like, I wouldn't have believed it a few years ago. I was a pretty strident atheist. I didn't believe in any of that stuff at all, which is ironic because I was already working with it in my bodywork practice. I was working with people in chronic pain, and they would always have a big emotional release and their pain would go away. But I didn't connect it. And I didn't connect what happened to me with my pain in my body was actually just stuck emotions that I wasn't letting out. I didn't put it together. Until I started having these energetic experiences in medicine space, in sacred ceremony. So my belief structure has changed radically over the years. And I do energy work on people. And I help them release physically. I help them release energy stuck in their body. So I do body work on people while they're journeying on medicine. So I work with people in that space. So my biggest change is accepting that is a real thing, but also accepting that I have been given this understanding and this gift to help people do this work. And it quite literally in a medicine journey where I met all my ancestors, by the way, all of them, thousands of them. Part of that journey, I released all sorts of, this is when I stopped being an atheist. Actually, it was after this journey. I released an old guardian angel that was stuck inside of me, and he had failed at protecting me. And he was just this energy that was stuck to me. And I gained a new spirit animal in this process. It was bizarre, very, very real. Anybody who's had a psychedelic experience, they say it's realer than real. It's realer than reality, but it's so other than reality at the same time. And that's what it was. So different. And in that journey, I was given this gift to take people on a journey. And I was shown a bridge in this journey. And these gods said, "This is yours. Do you accept it?" And I wrestled. I said, yes, I'll accept it. I understand that I have to take people and help them find their path. But I was reluctant to really step into it and do that work. And it culminated. Last November, I was on another psychedelic experience. This all happens in the woods. I do this out in the woods a lot. And when I was in this psychedelic space, I heard this voice, but a multitude of voices all at once. I was in my sleeping bag, and it said, "Get up." And it kind of brought me to a little bit. It said, "Get up." I said a third time, "Get up." And I think when you hear voices like that, you're supposed to get up. So he says it 3 times, it's time to get up. So I got up, and I was in Algonquin Park. And it was, if you remember last November, we had this really warm week in November, and it was like high 20s. It was beautiful. There's no bugs. It was November. It was fantastic. And I get up, and as I got up, there was a slight breeze. The breeze stopped completely, and the lake turned to a sheet of glass. And I just felt myself moving towards the lake. And I leaned down, I squatted, and I was looking in the lake, and I saw my reflection. And the voices again said, "This is you." And I just had these shivers, and this me, and it was like, and I had this moment of, I am me. This is what I'm doing. I'm doing it. Now I can do it. Now I have to do it. And this past men's hike that I did 2 weeks ago, that was a culmination of all this work I've been doing about allowing myself to be that maverick, to rise up and do the work I've been asked to do, to find the energy, the courage within me, to surrender to this flow of energy that it just flows through us. You just have to let it. But we have these blocks, fear. We have to let that go. We have to step through that fear and surrender to that energy and just do it. And so that was my journey in that men's hike. That was the final piece of work I was doing, and I did it. And I allowed myself to do it and surrendered to it. So that's my growth. That was the growth. I healed my wounds. You never fully, there's more. I'm sure I'll find another one. It's in there. But I've healed through the core wounds. I've learned how to be in relation to others. With a community of our friends and with my partner Nikki, learn how to grow into being a man, and now I'm allowing myself to step into that position of being an elder, to be a guide for others, and so that they can do the same thing. And that's been my journey. That's been my maverick journey, is to allow myself to say those words out loud. I am an elder. Was a really difficult thing for me to say, but saying that story brings it into reality.
Acceptance piece was the hardest, I hear.
Yeah.
So where are you now?
I am in a wonderful state of peace. I feel relaxed and satisfied and happy, joyous. My homeostasis where we don't live in that bliss zone.
Yeah.
Right. We can't. It'd be exhausting. We live in homeostasis, but our homeostasis is dictated by these anchors we have out on the sides of that, where we have like bliss and we have shame, anger, hatred down the other way. And so when you have those core wounds that are holding you in a state of anger, state of fear, state of grief, for me was a big one. For men, actually, a lot of men have grief stuck inside of them. A lot of women have have anger stuck inside of them. Fear blocks everybody. But so women have a lot of anger because women aren't allowed to be angry. Men have a lot of grief because we're not allowed to cry. Right? So we have those blocks. And then we have all sorts of other stuff, shame and everything else. When you've got those anchors in your life of grief, it pulls that homeostasis over towards that end. So you're kind of in a funk. Your normal is being in a bit of a funk. You're a bit down all the time. You have this fear, and I had a lot of fear too. So I had this fear and grief permeating my existence. Everything I've ever done has been tainted by fear and grief. Every decision was guided by fear and grief. My whole life, up until a few years ago, was guided by fear and grief. We all are.
Yeah.
Everybody's like that. We've got those wounds. You clear those wounds out and you have these experiences of utter bliss, of the universal gratitude and love and joy that flows through us when you completely surrender to that. Your homeostasis is now over here a little bit, and you feel this joy all the time. You feel joy as you feel satisfied and happy with life. And when you feel that way, you make better decisions.
Of course.
Right? Now you're being guided
Yeah.
by this feeling of love and gratitude. So your life is going to be guided by that, and you're going to live a life of love and gratitude.
So true.
Right? Things will still go sideways. The car is still going to break down.
Yeah.
Right? But you have this energy that's going to help guide those sort of negative parts of life, and you'll be able to cope with it so much better.
Just to be grounding yourself better in those moments of trial.
Yeah. In fact, we just talked about this yesterday in our men's group, that I actually now enjoy those moments of overwhelm where everything's going sideways. Those days like, oh my God, what's happening here? Because you notice when you're overwhelmed, you know it. And it gives me a moment to pause and say, okay, what is it that's overwhelming? And what part of me is showing up? Is that the little 3-year-old having a temper tantrum that's trying to do all the work right now?
Yeah.
That's pretty overwhelming. So in a state of overwhelm, it reveals the wounds I still left inside of me, these things to heal. So I don't like being in a state of overwhelm, but when I'm there, I use that as a tool to find parts of me to move forward and to heal. And in relation with my partner, when we're in conflict, well, if we're in conflict, we may as well use this as a growth opportunity.
Oh yeah.
What part of me is showing up that's causing this conflict? What can I do about it? How can I heal that? How can I address that part of me? Or maybe it's not my fault. So how do I stay in selfhood, my true self, and allow you to be hijacked by your wounds? And I'm going to hold that space for you while we are in conflict. So that is the role of couples in conflict. Either you're both wounded parts are showing up, or one person is in wounded parts and the other person is holding space for that person. But it's an opportunity to practice being in that selfhood and holding space for others, or healing yourself that's showing up.
And that's usually the most difficult and at the same time the most aware part.
Yeah.
If you can do that, that's definitely next level.
Yeah, that's like top level.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody can actually fully do it.
But or all the time do it, right?
Or all the time do it. Yeah, you have moments
Yeah.
that, because if you're in conflict with your wife and you believe you're in this selfhood, okay, I'm going to hold this space and you're going to go sideways on things, and she's saying mean things to you. She's calling you names, swearing at you. That's going to hurt. Like, that's going to hurt your parts.
Yeah.
How do you not become defensive or become resentful.
Mm.
It's near impossible.
Yeah.
But then there's repair, and there's growth afterwards.
That's right. It's for me, it's definitely constant journey and level of mastery that I'm aiming towards, to be able to be in that moment or that zone of acceptance and allowance for my partner during our fights, and also being present with my own emotions and not letting them hijack the whole system and whole conversation, because that's my go-to defense mechanisms, and just switch in without me even knowing, and knowing that it's switched in already gives me way more power and tool to work with it, right?
Yeah, that just the simple awareness. You don't even have to, and I explain this to people a lot when they're on their healing journey and they've discovered something about themselves. And they say, well, now what? Well, now nothing. You have the awareness. That's all it is. It's just awareness of who you are.
Yeah.
Lifts you into a greater state of selfhood. That's all it is. It's just awareness. And then admitting it. Because we know that we have stuff, but it's actually admitting to yourself by saying it out loud, writing it down. This is who I am. You don't have to do anything else. Because if you know that in conflict you become very, very emotional and you act out on those emotions, and now you know that, you'll notice when you're doing it and think, oh yeah, look at that. And then that next time you're in conflict, you can just sort of watch yourself acting it out. And now yourself watching this thing you've become going crazy. And you can just watch and say, oh, that's how all that works. I get it now. And then next time you're in conflict, you're going to say, oh, here's that thing that's going to trigger me again. I'm not going to let it trigger me. And now you have it under control.
So true.
And you don't have to do anything. It's just awareness. Because you don't want to be that, right? You want to be the higher self, I assume, right? And so just wanting to be in that higher self state, you're not going to act out like that as often or in that extreme way. But it's a forever journey.
It is.
Right?
It is, for sure.
Until you transcend into, Buddha mind. We never get there.
Yeah.
Right? But it is the journey that we're on our own unique path to become that.
And as cliche as it sounds, it is all about the journey. It's not about the destination, right? Because the destination point, it's always changing. Forever changing, right? So we go closer to it, we achieve it, and we already know what's our other destination, right? It might be a destination at first, but it might grow into something else, but it might also develop into something completely different, right? Or just become a stepping stone on the way for...
It becomes a stepping stone. And often for people when you're starting this journey, that first stepping stone, that's the destination. Let's just get there.
Yeah.
And then you take that, was it Confucius? This is the journey of 1,000 miles, begins with a single step.
That's right.
Right. So that single step is the destination. Let's just take that step. And then the rest is just going to happen.
Yeah.
And then forget about... You're right, there is no destination. If you think there's a destination, you're wrong. Right? If you think there's a destination, then you think there is a path to get to it.
Yeah.
And that's not how it works. There's no path there. The path reveals itself under you as you move through life.
So true. Based on what you said, where are you going?
That old saying, the more I learn, the less I know. I hope to know nothing.
That's so stoic. Yeah.
I am just continuing to grow with curiosity. I am just open to curiosity now. I don't feel like I have any specific wounded parts anymore. I notice from time to time I act in certain ways that make me curious, but that's what I am now. I'm just curious about what there is. Where I'm going with my life and what I do, sort of the maverick side, is I am committed to this path of healing and helping others find their healing path. That's I fully accept that role, and so I'm headlong into that, embracing it with my heart, my spirit, completely.
That's phenomenal. So on the part of this is your journey, but is there anything to the journey on the heritage side or your background side that you would like to add, improve on, work on, get deeper into?
Yeah, I am. So one of the things I've come to believe in is ancestral trauma, that we hold. Energy is passed on from parent to child, and it's not the parent. It may have been passed on to them and them. There's all sorts, and you can see cultural trauma as well in lots of societies, from horrible things that have happened to people to cultures around the world forever and ever and ever, and will always be that way, sadly. And we hold that energy, and a big piece of my healing with my grandfather's alcoholism, that was an ancestral trauma that was passed on to my mother, that affected my sister and me, and I healed that, and in that journey, I actually spoke with my grandfather. Again, in psychedelic worlds, I went for a walk with my grandfather, which I used to always do when he would come and visit. We would go for these beautiful walks. And I walked with him while on medicine through the woods, always in the wilderness. and released it, and learned his story, and share that story. And that's something that I'm working on now, is writing these stories down and publishing them on my Substack for people to read, so that they know. But I'm exploring that heritage of where I came from. There's something really bizarre happened to me on a medicine journey where I met my ancestors. And at first I met, my grandparents and had conversations. And for people who have never done a medicine journey, when you have these conversations with a tree or an eagle or an ancestor, we're not talking. It's just an energy moves into you, and a knowing is just there all at once. It's just something reveals itself inside of you. And so I met grandparents, but at the end of this, I was presented with thousands of my ancestors were before me. Thousands of them. And there was one man, and he was a robust man, and he had kind of long black hair, sort of down, sort of over his ears to his jawline, and he was a noble warrior or a hunter. He had that hunter warrior spirit about him, and he was of the land in North England. That's what I knew in that moment. 2 years ago, my partner Nikki, was it last year? Yeah, I guess it was 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, my partner Nikki got me an Ancestry.com kit, where I collected my spit and sent it off and did all that, and then I started tracing my family. And it's been fascinating. I have traced, and I was tracing through this one lineage, and in this family line, there were suddenly these dukes and lords were appearing. We're peasants. What's all this about? And they were all like the third son of the second marriage kind of thing. They weren't anyone special. They didn't have land. They just had a title. But it came to this this one woman, Fitzallen was her name, and she was the Lady of Lennox, second Duchess of something or other. I have it written down. That's kind of an important name. Who is this person? I actually went on Wikipedia, and she was there. This woman is there, and I think she's my 26th great grandmother. Her grandfather is Henry III. Her great grandfather is Louis the Lionheart of France. Like, what is this? But those weren't her names. And so as I was looking through this, and this is very diluted bloodline, but it's there. And then I looked at her name, the FitzAlan, and I followed the FitzAlan line back. And then that family were the founders of Chester, North England. They were the original people of that land. I found this out just a few months ago. Years after this experience where this hunter warrior of that land, of that space, presented himself to me. And now I've got this lineage that comes from there. It's bizarre. So I'm researching that. I want to know what happened there. And because that was the kind of the battle line between when the Romans invaded. That's where the Hadrian's Wall goes to that part of the country. They didn't get any further. And I want to know more about the ancient people of that land, because that is where I'm from. Right there. That's me in that land. And I want to go back there and feel the land. I'm very connected to land. I'm a wilderness guy. I am of the land. And whatever land I am on is where I am from. There's a word, the word weird. People have often called me weird. It's actually an old Welsh word. And I was born in Wales, but it's an old Welsh word that means to have a foot in both worlds. Yeah, and so...
That's a great meaning.
Yeah. It kind of makes you feel good about being weird. Yeah. Sure, I have a foot in both worlds, but both in the sort of the physical world and in the spirit energetic world that I work in, I've got a foot in both worlds. But I also have a foot in that space in North England where I'm from. But I have a foot here in this land where I live. And I feel very, very attached to the land in Canada. And, I feel at home there. It's been so healing for me to be in the Canadian wilderness. I'm a Canadian wilderness guide. That's where I live, is in that wilderness. Those are the two worlds that I am from, that North England and here in the boreal forest of Canada. So it
seems like puzzles come together.
Yeah. So
into a nice picture.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. So I'm curious, knowing the story and the direction that you are heading, but also the journey and the community that you are building, and still kind of discovering and putting those puzzles together of your own ancestry and heritage and lineage. What for you means to be successful?
Having a strong community and a sense of place is what success is for me.
Okay.
And the next step in Breathing in Nature, the company of Steve Beattie. So we're doing this healing work here in Toronto, but in a few years, my son is going to finish high school, and I have no reason to be in the city. The city is not a space for me. It's time to go. We're going to live out in the woods, up north somewhere. We're going to have a nice country plot of land, and on that land is going to be a longhouse, a big building to have retreats, where we're going to bring communities in and teach them about community and how to live in relation to others, and so and do our healing work in that space. And then we'll have tiny homes around the property. Ideally it's going to be on water somewhere, and so other people in our community will be able to live there as well. It'll be a communal living space of people in the healing arts doing their healing work, bringing an energy that supports us financially, as well as spiritually and emotionally. All that will be part of this. So that's kind of the business growth of where we're going, is to have that retreat center that we truly are part of. That is our space that we belong to. So that is the big step forward from here.
Amazing. And I want to hear a flip side of that. I want to hear what is your failure story?
My failure story? My failure story. I've got so many of them. My failure story was probably after I came back from Australia 6 years ago. I had this emotional awakening. I was a new person. And my wife at the time, she picked me up at the airport and she took one look at me and said, "You've changed." And I said, "Yes, I have, and we need to talk about that." And then we never did. And we had grown so far apart, completely. Before that, we had grown apart. We were roommates at best. But I didn't need anybody. So that was fine. I then got into this healing work, the Wim Hof method, teaching breath work, healing myself deeper and deeper and deeper, and starting to show other people how to heal. I believed that because I was doing this good work and I was teaching others about the awakening, I was kind of like a monk. And monks don't live in relation with anybody, so I could do that too.
Kind of a celibate type thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I convinced myself that I could live that way. And that was a failure. That was denying myself a huge piece of my existence.
And you were in a relationship then, right?
Yeah, I was with my wife, right? And we have a son. We had a home, but we weren't husband and wife at all. We were just two adults in a building together. So that was allowing my home to fail in that place. That was my failure. I've never said this before. That was a really good question. I'll try not to cry.
Feel free.
Yeah, so that was my failure in this journey that I'm on now. That was where I failed, denying my existence in that space. Where it changed was 2 years ago. It was during the pandemic. I was doing the breath work at the beach. I was inviting people down, and we were going to the cold water, and the community, like the group, was growing and growing and growing and growing. We'd have 40, 50, 60 people there. Like, there's a lot of people. Bang my drum, get people breathing, and we'd go into the cold water and then, dry off, and I'd say, "Okay, see you next week," and I'd leave. And then one day there was this beautiful woman there named Nikki, said, "Where are you going all the time? Come back here, hang out with us." I'm going, "What do you mean hang out with you guys?" So I stood around for a while and looked, and everybody was there. Everybody was hanging out and talking and hanging out and having a good time and enjoying each other's company. What is this? And I just sat and I watched, and then people would talk to me, and suddenly I'm just relating and understanding and feeling this presence, this community, friends, other people, their hearts open, and suddenly I'm having this emotional release to being around people. So I wasn't a lone wolf anymore. I needed people, but I was denying myself that. And now suddenly I'm sitting with this group of people having a good time and really loving it. And the community was formed. The community already formed.
Yeah, it seems like it was there already before.
There. I just decided to join it one day. At the assistance of Nikki. She's the one who said, "Where are you going?" And so I stayed. And it was this beautiful community was just there. But it took somebody else to say, "Where are you going? Get back here. Be part of this." Otherwise, I don't. If Nikki didn't do that, I might still be where I was.
There are those nudges from the universe or from other people that gives us a completely new perspective very often, right? And only from looking at it from the time past from that moment, you can see, oh shit. So actually, if not that, it
probably something else would have been there. But only, like, it had to be, I had this saying, the universe comes around, and the first time it's just a caress on the cheek. We tend not to notice. then it comes around again and gives you a slap across the face. And you should notice.
Yep.
But, you know, I'm thick. You know, I didn't with my own health. You know, I was developing some mild inflammatory things. That was a caress saying, there's something wrong with you. And my body was screaming out. It got louder and louder and louder. It wasn't until I was lying in the hospital bed with my heart failing, you know, the universe came around and ran me over with a steam train before I like woke up and thought, okay, I'll do something now. I wonder if, you know, the community was there. They were hanging out. You know, I knew they were. I knew people were hanging out when I was going home. Didn't do anything about it. That was the caress on the cheek saying, hey, wake up. And then it was when Nikki said, hey, get back here and hang out. That was a slap across the face for me to, you know, leave the situation, the beginning of me leaving that situation at home, right? I wonder what would have happened if I said, no, I got to go. You know, what would have happened? You know, what would have been the steam train that ran me over next?
Yeah.
Who knows? Don't have to find out now.
Fortunately, the universe made it unveil in specific way, which you continue to go that bridge path that you were saying. It's and you, leading people through it across to the other side, which is phenomenal.
Yeah.
What's the biggest problem that you are facing?
Probably financial problems. You know, it's not teaching breath work, guiding people in journeys, helping people find a healing path. The Western world doesn't want people to heal. So there's not a big reward for that. So that's the challenge. It's, you know, it's fine. We're fine, but, you know, not getting rich anytime soon. And I have this plan to have this piece of land. So something needs to move. That's earning enough money for that creation, getting the energy flow in to manifest that is the biggest hurdle in my life right now. But that's really it. It's, you know, life is good. Life is really good for me. You know, it was a long time it wasn't, and now it's really, really good.
That's phenomenal. You are saying a lot about the community, a lot about people, and you even had a nudge from Nikki, or you can even say the universe telling you, you pay attention, you jerk, don't leave this place because you created it and now you're leaving and everybody's having fun. Where are you going? Actually, take a part of it, take advantage of it. Knowing that and knowing that you are going through that journey with other people and helping them build that community, what would you do to help a person that is in that community or it's getting into it feel that they belong more?
It's being open. It is just being open-hearted and welcoming. I know you asked, how do I make somebody feel welcome? It's acceptance. Just accepting everybody exactly as they are and love them exactly as they are. There's no, and that's a big part of men's work, is conditional love. A lot of the love that we receive is conditional. Even from our intimate partner, you know, it's conditional on us being a breadwinner. It's conditional on us being a protector. And we had a lot of conditions growing up. A lot of people had unconditional love from their parents, and they're healthy and happy people. It was wonderful. But we've always learned, right from the get-go, we've always learned that we have to be a certain way in order to be accepted by this group.
Mm-hmm.
When we were kids, if you were slightly odd as a kid, you didn't have any friends.
Yeah.
Right? Kids are cruel.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It seems schools are a lot better now with a lot of things, and kids are more accepting of others. But, my son has told me about the weird kids at school. There are weird kids, and they don't have a lot of friends. They don't know how to relate, and they're not accepted. Unconditional acceptance. You are who you are, and I love you that way. Or what I like to say is, I love you anyway. Any way I can love you, I will love you. So we look for the good. Everybody has beautiful qualities about them.
Yeah.
And so this community that we have, that's what we just see, because we are a community of healing. And healing only happens in a state of love. That's how we heal. So we have to be tapped into what is love. And that was a lot of work for me. How do I love myself?
Mm-hmm.
And I made reference to that earlier, that the sport I chose was punishment. I tortured myself. The way I would train for a bike ride, I would bike out in one direction until I couldn't go any further, and then I'd turn around and come home. Like, I just beat myself up all the time. I was no different than a teenage girl who cuts herself.
Mm-hmm.
And only I was doing with sports, so I was athletic, and that's good. Right? That's how society sees it. And there's a lot of that self-punishment.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That's not love. Even how we'll give ourselves a reward after we do this thing. Well, that's putting conditions on yourself.
Yeah, that's
right there. We do it all the time.
The dopamine spike, which
Yeah.
is basically just lowering the levels of the baseline, and just keeps us addicted to doing it again and again, right?
Yeah. And so learning how to love yourself is tremendous. And men are terrible at it. Absolutely terrible at it.
Yeah.
And even loving our bodies. We're really, men and women are really bad at that. But because a lot of my pain early on started in my feet and in my ankles, that was kind of the origin of it. And there's another origin story there. But on a medicine journey, I was looking at my feet and I realized I hated them. And I felt this, I just felt sorry. And I apologized to my feet and began to love them. And the pain, I was still having pain at the time, and the pain went away and never came back. So it's love that heals. And it's love that heals those wounds in your heart and that inner child. And it's the love of the community that heals us all. And so when you just love somebody, when they come in and make them feel loved, and it's a feeling. Love is a feeling. You can say I love you to someone, and that's, words are meaningless. People do it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
People say I love you, I'm sorry, all the time. That doesn't mean anything. It's the actions and the energy that you give that matter. And that's when somebody comes to our community, and everybody has said this, they feel something different about walking into this community. A level of acceptance and love that they can just be. They don't have to be anything else. They can just be them. They can be their beautiful, weird self. We love them anyway. I think that's the big difference with our community.
We're going to be aiming towards summarizing this amazing conversation, but before I'm going to give you those last bits and last questions, I want to still touch point on, from your perspective, what would be the advice you would have for young mavericks or people who are just trying to figure out their way, the way they are different, they are struggling, they're not being accepted, and what would be the way that they can find support and they can find belonging and they can find their own community or a tribe, right?
You need your tribe. You need the others. And I always tell people that. Find the others. And the others aren't people who are just like you. The others are people who accept you as who you are. So find those people. And when you find that community, you have energy. It flows through. You have energy to create. It unleashes a creative energy inside of you. And then you can create whatever it is that you're building. The entrepreneurial spirit that you have is that's creative energy. It's unleashed. When you're struggling to fit in, to be with this group, you are dumping energy into it to try and make yourself belong, because you have to be something else. Well, if you're something else, you are suppressing who you are. And then you can't be the thing that you know that you are, that you want to be. You can't grow into that. Yeah. There's one of the stories I have on Substack is the lessons of the white pine. And I have a lot of stories about being on medicine, but a tree spoke to me. And the white pines are the really massive ones. They're huge and they grow really tall. They're huge. They're the ones that drove the lumber industry in Canada. But as they grow, the branches reach out and they collect the sun, and it grows even taller. And those bottom branches wither and die. Yeah, they're no longer receiving sunlight, so the tree just cuts energy to them and they fall off. And then that gives the tree energy to grow even taller. And the branches fall, it grows taller, and then this massive canopy that stretches across the sky, because it does away with the branches that's no longer serving energy to the system. And then the white pine said, why do you give energy to the branches that no longer serve you? We do that all the time. Yeah. We have so many dead branches in our life where we're just dumping energy into it, and it's never going to give anything back. So true. When I cut that branch of my marriage and we got divorced, just that moment when said, we're separating, I felt this energy rise within me. Not all this energy for my work, for my business, and suddenly clients were flowing into my life. I didn't do anything other than cut that branch off. So find where you're wasting your energy. Cut it off. Don't give it any more energy. And that might mean cutting friends out of your life, cutting family out of your life. Yeah. Those are hard decisions to make. But if there is a toxic person in your life that's sucking the will to live out of you, where you can't create your dream, you can't manifest this thing that you know you have, you got to get rid of that person. You got to get rid of it. It's a really hard thing to do, but you have to do it if you are the maverick, if you are stepping outside of the structure of society and creating what you know is right. You got to make some hard decisions, and those are some of them. Cut off your dead branches and find the others. Cut off the dead branches and find the others. Yeah, it's that journey of a maverick is a tough one, but once someone decides to be true with themselves and with the story that they are willing to build, and with whatever is true to them, new worlds are opening up. I have two questions that are gonna sum up this conversation, starting with, what question would you like to be asked more often? Oh boy, what question would I like to be asked more often? How can I help you? I am still deeply challenged in asking for help from people. That's a hard one for me. How can I help you? Are you asking me that? I am. By telling the others. That's what you can do for me, is tell the others that this is here, that I am here. so that I can do what I do.
I believe there will be a lot of talking about this community and what you do going forward. And just after this show, we're gonna dive deeply into it as well. However, as a closing remark of this phenomenal conversation, what have been the greatest day of your life?
The greatest day of my life. I think I'm going to say what every parent says. The birth of my son was the greatest day of my life, because that was, my son came in, a piece of me came into this world. It was the ultimate of creation, but it was the changing point. It was the beginning. It's when I first spoke my story. And it was because my son was born. So that was, and he has been my greatest teacher along the way. So yeah, that was the greatest day of my life.
Steve, it was phenomenal. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you for all the wisdom and going deep and staying true to what you believe and what you share with others. Thank you for giving us and me and audience the glimpse to it. And I believe and I encourage everybody to reach out and go on that deeper level of a journey.
This has been a phenomenal experience for me. This is more than I thought. It's been great. This has been, you are creating something absolutely phenomenal.
Thank you, Steve.
With this. Amazing.
Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
And it's a wrap. We dare you. If you are bold enough, hit subscribe, repost the rebellion, and don't miss out on next week's episode. It's going to be bloody brilliant. See you on the next one.